everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today I have me, a Life here, and we're going to be talking about her book, Bounty from the Box. Welcome.
Thank you.
We did an earlier show learning all about CSA farms. And tell us what CSA stands for.
CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture.
Yes.
So you pay a farm directly a lump sum of money at the beginning of the year, like right about now, and you get a box of produce
every
week during their growing season.
Very cool. Okay, so the best thing ever is that on February 24th, a lot of farms probably in your region are having a special promotion.
For CSA Day on February 24th. So CSA Day is kind of an informal national sign-up day. So that's really a great time. Many farms are signing up participants now. To get a sense of, get their larders here filled.
Yeah, and you may get a discount. Some of them want discounts.
Exactly.
So this is, if you're ever wondering about, hey, I thought about getting those boxes, but should I or should I not? It's a good way to try it out. Okay, so now we're going to go through, you've gotten a box of vegetables. So we have a bunch of vegetables before us. And what would you do with these vegetables? So these are from, which farm did you get these from?
So these are from Nash's Organics. And they're out of Sequim, Washington, which is up north of us.
Okay.
They're quite a large farm. They have a couple hundred CSA farm members, but they do a lot of supplying of the area farmers markets.
Okay.
And they also supply many local grocery stores as well. So,
okay.
Anyway, I just brought a kind of a sampling of lots of little different things, so we're kind of jump from one thing to another, get a chance to learn
so show folks what it looks like. So what we're working on first
let's see, I brought several different kinds of kale. So these are all things that are in season at the moment. So
okay, all different kinds.
Yeah. So
I didn't even know there were 3 different kinds. I just thought kale was kale. There are 3 different kinds of kale.
So this kale that you're holding up here, it's this is just a baby form of what they call dinosaur kale or lacinato kale, and you can tell that it has very very crinkly, gray, gnarled skin, almost like what you might imagine a dinosaur to have.
Right.
A very stiff form. Usually, you will see this in a much larger form of leaves.
Yeah, like kind of big,
1.5 feet long.
Yeah.
That.
Okay.
This is kind of probably more of the types of kale that
curly.
you're used to. Yeah, the curly kale. So there's more of a red one. There's a greenish one here. Basically, there's not a lot of difference between the different kinds of kale in flavor.
Yeah, so they're going to taste the same.
Right. Most kale, I recommend actually quick cooking most kale. Most kale is not that pleasant to eat raw because it's kind of prickly on the throat.
You mean so when you eat those kale salads, do they cook them beforehand?
No, those are actually raw, but I recommend that if you do eat it raw, that you try to grate it or chop it up fairly finely so it doesn't, kind of get stickery in your throat.
Yeah, it feels like I'm eating twigs on my throat. I'm like,
And I find the best way actually to cook kale is just to braise it just a short time, get some chicken or vegetable stock.
Right.
And just cook it, on fairly medium heat and just simmer it for probably about 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
It can be just delicious that way.
Okay, so sorry for people who don't know what braising is. Yeah. I'm not a cook at all.
Right. Braising just means to sort of simmer something in liquid.
Okay, so how much chicken stock would I put in there?
Oh, I would say probably maybe have like a cup.
And then just stick
And then just stick. You can add probably like a whole armful, a whole bunch of kale, because the kale will cook down.
Yeah, it will shrink down. It's like a shrinky dink.
Right, so it'll cook down to about a quarter or maybe even less of what you originally started with. So just expect that even though the pan may look like it's overfilling here, that it'll cook down very fast.
Okay, so I shrink this down and then just eat it, right? Just season and eat it.
It's a side dish. Really good with a little bit of hot pepper.
And does that twig feeling go away?
Yes, it does. What you want to do, and everybody is different in how they prefer their vegetables. Some people like them just, barely cooked. Others really just want them to be very, very soft. That's entirely up to you and your preference. My recommendation is just that you try a leaf every so often and just see, what it is.
Okay, so here's what would happen to me. I'd buy this, and then it would sit in my refrigerator for about a week, and then I would then go and bring it to compost. I would have good intent. I'd start with good intentions. And this is what happens.
It's your it's not your grocery list. It's your compost list.
It is. Okay, so how can I store? Can I freeze it? Like, what can I do with this?
The best thing with kale is kale actually keeps very well. You can just wrap it up. The thing with vegetables, it's usually an enemy is moisture.
Okay.
So you don't typically ever want to wash anything. Root vegetables, greens, you don't want to wash them because that washing them will just make it more likely for them to get slimy.
Okay.
And it just traps mold and bacteria. So you want to keep them unwashed right when you're ready to use them, and then just do a quick rinse or scrub. Kale often hides, because of these little furrows here, they often hide aphids and, little creepy crawly things. So it's always good to give them a wash. And
I would have never thought like a little spider would come out of here. But
actually, it's funny because I was prepping some of these this morning, and there was actually a little green caterpillar that rolled out one.
So wash these things.
But that's a good thing. That's actually a good sign because it means that they weren't grown with pesticides and chemicals. And so, whatever kills caterpillars, it isn't good for us either. The best way to wash these actually is just to fill your kitchen sink, about halfway with water and submerge these greens fully and just swish them around, rinse them, and that'll cause a lot of things too.
Okay, so CJ has had this sitting in our refrigerator for a long time. This happens so often.
A long time.
Yeah, and then I think, I don't know, like a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm on vacation. I'm like, I bought that kale and never used it. So when do you say that's enough? Enough is enough. You feel bad, but you can eat it or you can't eat it.
Well, it's usually pretty obvious. I mean, kale, when it starts to go off, it'll start to get yellow. It might smell more cabbagey. A little bit more sulfurous. It'll be pretty obvious. Or just
so do you just this is another thing. I buy lettuce, right? And and then it goes bad. And then there's some pieces like I think I could pick around this lettuce or some lettuce.
Absolutely.
But if I do pick around, is it like I'm just eating garbage lettuce, which just has no nutritional value? These are the things I wonder about.
It depends on how long it's been hanging around. But no, I mean, there's no reason why you can't, just cut out and around the bad portions. Obviously, if there's mold or obvious real rot setting in, you probably don't want to use it. You just don't want to risk it.
But you can eat the non-rotten places.
But you can eat, yes.
And it's probably less nutritious than in the day you bought it. But
right, but all things being equal, it should be perfectly fine. As long as it smells, it looks, it smells, and it tastes okay. It'll be fine.
Okay. All right, kale. Oh, we have so many things. I'm so excited.
We do. Actually, we have 2 different kinds of beets. Now, this doesn't maybe look very promising. This is a golden beet.
Right. And for folks that are listening on the radio, it's a golden beet. It looks, it's a golden beet.
It looks like a beet, except that it's orange.
Right.
And although the root that I just held up looked a little unpromising, this is what these things look like when they're cut. And they're a beautiful color. They're a little, beets, as you know, are very sweet. All beets are sweet. They have one of the highest sugar concentrations of all vegetables.
Yeah.
But these beets are a little milder. They're not quite as beet flavored, beety as some of the beets are.
Right.
But these are great for adding color to a dish, just having kind of a milder vegetable flavor. And I also brought.
Wait, but first of all, how does one choose? So I'm looking at the beets. I'm like, they all look the same to me. I mean, what am I looking for when I'm buying a beet?
Essentially, for any kind of root vegetable, you're just looking that it is firm. That they're nice and firm. Don't worry about the sturdy part here. That's just simply where the tops came off.
Okay.
Sometimes root vegetables, they can look pretty ugly. They may have scabs.
Right, this seems like I would look at this and thought I need to throw this out.
No. I mean, just cut around it, basically.
Right.
There's a lot of people, waste a lot of food because they look at something like this that has gnarls, blemishes, dirt, scabs, whatever, and they think, yeah, it's not good, but that's not true. Actually, you just cut around.
All right, so let me ask you a
parts.
question. So let's take a blemish to know how to. This sounds stupid, but how to cut out, what to cut out, and what not to cut out. So if I look at this, there's like a little black hole there, right?
Yeah, just basically in there. Just cut around it with your knife. You're going to be trimming off this top part anyway,
right?
Because that's where the stem, and you can use that in compost or whatever.
And you can kind of tell, right? Like you'll see when you cut it open, you'll see where it's rotten.
Yeah, in this case, it's not rotten. It's just simply a part of the beet where it's grooved and there's soil.
Okay, and then what does one do to store beets?
Just keep them unwashed, and you can put them in a plastic bag.
Oh no, tell me, and a paper towel.
Paper towels are more useful for greens.
Okay, got it.
Because they tend to absorb more moisture.
Okay.
But these things should be stored unwashed. Or if you have a really cold place, like maybe your garage.
Yeah.
At this time
of the year. Cellar.
A root cellar. But even if you don't, just find the coolest, driest place that does not have light.
Okay.
In your house or in your basement or in the garage. Just try not to forget that they're there.
How long is this going to last? Like, I probably would forget that it's
beets would probably, actually these, if they're kept cold enough, like we're talking maybe like temperatures in 40s to 50s here, these should last for several months.
What?
Yeah, but just keep checking on them regularly and make sure that they're dry, that they are not being exposed to moisture. Moisture is the destroyer.
Okay, got it. So if I've actually bought root vegetables. This has been sitting around for a while, but you can kind of tell because they get kind of like shriveled up, like they look like those shriveled apple ladies.
And that's how you can usually tell for root vegetables going bad. It'll start to kind of get that shriveled, desiccated look, which means it's losing moisture. If there's any parts that are soft, obviously that's a problem. Or if you see the thing sprouting, that's a pretty good sign that,
Well, I've had that going, well, why is it sprouting? So it's actually
sprouting because it's usually in response to a warmer temperature and a source of light. And that's another reason why you want to have these things in a cool, dark place, because during that time...
But I'm thinking it's growing, so it must be still good.
These vegetables will think, once they're exposed to light and warmth, they'll think, it's time to grow. It's springtime. So you want to keep them in that cool, dark place.
Okay.
But some vegetables, like potatoes, they will kind of want to march forth anyway at a certain time. And once potatoes in particular start sprouting, you definitely do not want to eat them, because at that point they're producing a toxin. So if the skin looks green or if they're starting to sprout, don't eat them, because they could make you sick.
Is that true of any other of the root vegetables?
No,
or
it's
potatoes?
just potatoes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And specifically, that's true just of potatoes, not sweet potatoes.
Interesting.
Which are an entirely
I did not know. So it actually creates toxins when it's in there.
Right. Yeah. It's the same thing that makes tomato leaves.
Like toxins kill you, or toxins and just doesn't taste
it probably won't kill you, but it'll just give you a really, really bad stomach ache. And they'll be very bitter, and they're also very bitter, so you wouldn't want to
eat them. Yeah, you'll taste them and go, ooh, they taste awful.
Right.
Wow, okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So continuing along the beet, this is a little bit different than your typical beet, but this is also a beet. It's what they call a cylinder beet. Just going to cut one open here. This one's a nice, rich, red, typical beet color. Okay. One thing a lot of people don't know is that actually beets and cabbages and things that have kind of a reddish color, the more red color they have in them, actually the more nutritious they are. Because the very chemicals that give these plants their color, they're called phytonutrients. They are kind of like micronutrients. They're not really classified as such by the USDA, but they are known to have beneficial benefit for our bodies.
Okay, because I've always read the more colorful you're eating, the better it is. But it's specifically this red, right? I mean, it's
specifically this red, or the thing that gives the golden beet this color.
So it's not the actual red; it's anything that has the bright color means it has more phytonutrients.
Right, and the chlorophyll in green vegetables too. But it's especially true of anything that is red. Blueberries is another example. We often hear about eating blueberries because of their antioxidants. Well, part of it comes from that color that the blueberries have.
Right. Okay, and what do you suggest that we do for preparing these beets?
So one of the best ways to make any of these root vegetables, whether it's potatoes, beets, parsnips, others, is just to cut them up into fairly uniform pieces and just drizzle a little olive oil or hazelnut oil or something like that on them.
Hazelnut oil, that sounds good.
And a little bit of salt and pepper, and just roast them in an oven for about like 370 for maybe an hour. Depends on how big.
Right, just like you would do a baked potato. Yeah.
Exactly, but just arrange them in a baking pan. You can do this for potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, parsnips, rutabaga, leeks, which I'll go over in a minute.
Right.
Just throw all these things in a pan. Make
like
sure there's
olive oil or whatever.
I like to chop up a little bit of garlic and a
right.
little bit of rosemary and sprinkle those on top. And nothing could be easier. And,
right, that's super easy.
Right, and the thing with roasting is that it naturally caramelizes the sugars that are already present in the vegetable.
Right.
So as opposed to steaming or boiling these things, which tends to leach flavor out of them, the roasting actually concentrates those flavors.
I did not know.
Because it caramelizes that natural sugar, and the vegetables lose a little moisture, so that really concentrates the flavors.
Interesting. So, okay, because I love, of course, I love baked potatoes, but I usually take a sweet potato and just cut it in half. And the way that I've done, seriously, the way that I did beets was possibly the hardest way to do it, because I can see if I cut that, so I have to take all the skin off of it, right?
Not necessarily with all the vegetables. It's actually better, if you did actually leave the skin.
So it's like a potato.
Vegetables, yeah.
Well, you just saved me so much time.
I know. Well, and the skins contain a lot of nutrients. They contain a lot of fiber too. Now, you may not find it pleasant to eat them, so it's kind of up to you what works best. But once
potato skins.
But once you roast vegetables, you can take the skins off easily. You can choose to eat them or not too. It's really up to you. But the roasting tenderizes everything, so it makes
so it's a lot easier to take it off. Right. It sounds so stupid, but I never thought about that. So I'm actually like peeling these things. It takes forever to peel it, and then your hands get all red. And then I was like, versus just slicing them and then doing it afterwards.
And in the case of beets, especially anytime you cook with beets, this is not so much true with the golden beets because the color doesn't really leach out, but the red beets, you want to try to avoid, if you're not roasting them, if you're steaming them or mixing them with other things, you want to cook them separately and not actually cut into where the red flesh is. So in other words, you're kind of holding that color.
It looked like a bloody mess.
Yes. So
it leaches all sorts of like color all over the place. Okay, got it. So I could actually do a little root vegetable roasted melody and just olive oil, salt, and then there.
And and actually, we have a recipe on our website. Bountyfromthebox.com is my website where you can order the book, but we also have a large recipe section.
For free recipes, I can look up there.
Yes, free recipes. We've got quite a few of them. They're classified under different categories, but we have a roasted vegetable.
Okay, so we have a turnip. Is this a turnip?
No, these are both the same thing. These are parsnips.
Oh, parsnips. What's the difference? Okay, this is a parsnip. Our turnips look the same, right?
Turnips are different. Turnips look, they're more bulbous.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, so this is a parsnip.
So this is parsnips. These both are. This happens to just be like a monster parsnip.
It's huge.
Nash's Organics has quite a range of these guys. But parsnips are kind of one of the undersung vegetables in the root world. They look really ugly. They look really ugly. A lot of people are not sure about them, but at this time of the year especially, they are some of the tastiest veggies around. And the reason is that plants, when the weather gets colder, they convert their starches into sugar because that's how the plant actually survives the winter. So a lot of vegetables, like our kale, for instance, they actually get sweeter as the winter goes on. And in the case of these parsnips, I'm not sure if Nash has left them in the ground up until recently, but many farms do this, especially a place where the ground doesn't freeze. But even if it does, you can still do this. But the parsnips will get sweeter and sweeter as the winter goes on, and they're underneath that snow or the very cold ground. So by this time of the year, they can be literally as sweet as candy.
Wow.
And it used to be that parsnips were actually used way back when as a sweetener by early Americans.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, before they had inexpensive sugar or other sources of sugar, parsnips were used as a sweetener.
Wow, interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I have a question about this parsnip. If you were to, people on the radio, if you were to see this parsnip, it's gigantic. It's like a club. It's like about the size of a turkey wing or turkey drumstick.
Leg, yeah.
Okay, turkey leg. All right, so this is so gigantic. How would I, and you were talking about, like this, I get like how I'd slice this up and put it in, with olive oil. What does one do with this?
Well, you can basically do the same thing, actually. You can just kind of slice this up with a cleaver. Just hack it into sections.
Right, and then keep on cutting it down into little squares.
Right, or you don't even have to really do that. If you're roasting it, which is probably what I would recommend for this guy.
Yeah.
As a way of pre-cooking it, just the easiest thing would be, you could either roast it whole, actually.
Yeah. I like that even more. You just saved me more time. Roast it whole. Okay.
Just roast it whole.
But why
just cut it into sections?
What's the difference between chopping and roasting it whole?
It doesn't really matter. But if you're roasting, the roasting kind of dries out the skin, the outer surface there. Right. So sometimes you don't always want to necessarily expose that much surface to this, to the heat, because it's going to kind of be a little bit dried out unless you have a lot of oil on it. So, right.
Okay. Got it. So it kind of depends on how you're cooking it. With a ton of olive oil, then go ahead and you can saute it with olive oil. If not, you're trying to do a little bit healthier. Then. Right.
Probably for a parsnip this big, I would recommend just roasting it first, no matter what you're going to use it for. So you can saute these things. Once it's kind of pre-cooked a little bit, you can saute them. You can also run them through a sieve or a food processor and use them as a soup base. So you could combine it with onions or potatoes.
Right, and make soup. Any of these things are like you can make soup out of.
Exactly.
Basically, just mix it with. Right. Which sounds so stupid, but I didn't know. I'm like, oh, you mean any of these root vegetables? I can just add chicken stock. Right. Puree it, and then you have a soup.
Exactly. Or you can combine them with other root vegetables. So parsnips are really exceptionally good with carrots and potatoes together, sort of a triumvirate of vegetables.
Okay, so potato to me has a bad name because I've been told it's starchy, it's bad for you. Mm-hmm. It's like it has a high glycemic, index, so it means like it's sugar. Is that true for these other root vegetables?
So these contain quite a bit of sugar. Yes, they do. They have some starch in them, but I mean everything is relative, right? I don't like to say that any diet's like truly a bad diet unless it's just.
But is this the equivalent of eating fruit because it has so much? Okay.
No, and this has so much fiber in it. That's another thing that people often don't take into account, is that something like this actually has a lot of fiber, so it will fill you up more quickly. I would not worry about,
Like I'm eating parsnips in the dead of winter, which means they're the most sugary. Mm-hmm. Am I doing something unhealthy?
Yeah, it's
for
not
myself?
like candy. Right. Or even fruit juice or anything like that.
Right.
Now, if you were to juice a beet, for instance, that's kind of a different story, because then
you've taken all the fiber out of it.
Exactly. Once you juice anything, then you concentrate all the sugars and the calories and all that.
Right.
So
it's like processing anything.
Right. So part of eating better with any of these vegetables is to eat the whole vegetable.
Okay.
And you get the fiber, and that will fill you up, and I wouldn't worry about.
Okay, but then when you do the soup, aren't you actually pureeing it and then making, or because you're
right?
What's the fiber?
But that's different than the juicing side of it too.
Where you're just squeezing out all the fiber and just getting the juice out of it.
Right, and concentrating all the sugars.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. I just learned another. Yeah. So but why are potatoes not like? Why do people malign potatoes and all these diets?
Because a lot of times potatoes, think about what we normally do with them. We make them into
fry them. Oh,
browns.
I see.
Yeah. We make them into hash browns. We do French fries. If we have a baked potato, we tend to load it with sour cream and cheese. Okay.
So the potato itself is not guilty.
No, the potato itself is like perfectly healthy, good food. It's just all the stuff that we put on.
Okay. Okay, I get it. Fair enough. Okay.
So, another little root vegetable. This is actually personally one of my favorites, and you may be looking at it and thinking, what on earth are these things?
Yeah, it looks like a deformed potato.
So these are called Jerusalem artichokes.
Oh, interesting. So folks who are out there, it's like it's got these bulbous little bumps all over it, and it feels like a root, but it's an artichoke.
No, well, they're
What?
called Jerusalem artichokes.
Okay.
Or they're called sunchokes. But Jerusalem, they have no connection with Jerusalem.
Okay.
Or actual artichokes. So we don't know how they got their name. They're actually a member of the sunflower family.
Okay.
They have a very attractive plant if you ever want to try growing it in your own home yard. But they have these little knobby tubers, and these are just really, really delicious. I've actually cut a few slices open. In fact, if you'd like
so it
to
looks
try
like a potato.
if you'd like to nibble it.
Okay, so it looks like a potato.
And they have a very crunchy, crisp texture, kind of like a jicama or
it's really good.
And they're quite sweet, you may notice. And they're a little unusual in that they're one of the few vegetables that actually has their sugar in the form of inulin, which, not to be confused with insulin, which is a different thing. But inulin is actually a type of sugar that diabetics can process more easily. So it can be a good, option for diabetics.
So I feel now I'm like making this really large crunchy noise near the mic. That's nothing to do with you. It has to do with my large crunching sound.
Well, these are very crispy.
They're very crunchy.
And actually, because of that, they make, just really kind of an ideal vegetable for like a raw vegetable tray. They have a lot of fiber. They're really pleasing in salads or slaws or that kind of thing. But
very good.
But yeah, you can cook these and... you can steam them, you can roast them like we just talked about. They're really good in soup.
They kind of taste like a potato, like a yucca. What is it? Jicama?
Jicama.
Jicama.
Yeah.
They taste sort of like a jicama, between a jicama and potato.
Right. We actually have a recipe in the book for them as cooked up as fritters, which are quite lovely, speaking of healthy things.
Yes, that does sound good.
But yeah.
So you would find that in the root vegetable area of your grocery store.
And, they're not commonly carried by a lot of grocery stores. They're kind of... Part of what turns people off sometimes about them is that they have the skin on them that you can see on the video.
Right.
For those of you not seeing the video, they have kind of this thin skin, these little knobs on them. And so many people think, wow, you'd have to peel them.
Yeah, it looks like it's maybe rotten or whatever.
And they're really not. You don't have to peel these. You can actually, the skin's very thin, and you can just eat them. And it actually is, again, it's a good source of fiber.
Right.
So I would just recommend just not bothering to peel or do anything.
Right.
Unless looks are
right. I could, if I wanted to, I could maybe eat this like an apple.
Exactly. Yeah.
I won't because I'll make a large crunching sound.
Okay. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention with the parsnips that we covered earlier is that parsnips, because of their sweetness and kind of earthiness, they actually combine really well with ginger and cinnamon, coconut, and honey. So if you want to make
honey,
and if you want to make sort of an unusual side dish, I would recommend experimenting with some of those flavorings to make it. It can almost be like a dessert type thing, or just a sweeter
parsnip muffin. Is there a parsnip muffin?
I'm sure there is.
Well, people are always like, how can I get my kids to eat more vegetables?
Exactly.
So the root vegetables seem to be with the sweetness.
They can be, the sweetness, the roasting. A lot of kids, they're attracted to the sweet flavors, and that would be a more palatable way. Or I actually have an essay in my book. My book actually covers a lot of essays about different things about food and eating, and one of them is about how to get kids to eat vegetables. And one way is to roast them or to actually serve them raw, because a lot of kids just don't like cooked vegetables.
You two children can make large crunching sounds that will irritate your parents. Okay, what's that?
Okay, so this is the leek. Now, some of us are familiar. We've probably seen them in markets.
Yes.
And these are beautiful. Again, these are from Nash's here. Some leeks that I've seen are really huge. Like I've seen leeks that are about 2 feet long.
Wow.
With stalks like about that big.
Wow.
A lot of them are a lot smaller than that, more like these. Anyway, leeks are kind of another sort of underused vegetable in America. They're
They're like an onion, right?
They are an onion, member of the onion family. They most often we're familiar with them in leek and potato soup.
Oh, yes.
So you see that in restaurants a lot.
Yes, that's good.
The vichyssoise. But in Europe, they're used much, much more than they are here. In fact, leeks are part of the emblem of the national emblem for the country of Wales.
What?
A little bit of trivia.
No, I like that. Interesting.
And they're often just cooked and kind of used as a vegetable in their own right. So what you would do is just put them in a baking pan. Again, kind of like what we did with the root vegetables. Just put them in a baking pan. You can cut off about this much of the top, although the tops are...
Yeah, if you were to feel the tops, they feel like leaves of a plant.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were leaves of a plant. A house plant. But they feel kind of rough.
Yeah, but the tops actually make a very good, base for making your own stock.
Right,
so
you throw this in with your vegetable stock.
Soup stock, so don't throw the tops away necessarily.
Okay.
Any part of the leek is edible, but just basically cut to kind of just above the white part where that ends. And also leeks require quite a bit of washing too, so it's a little bit of a trick because they actually the way they grow is obviously along central stalk, and to get them white, growers have to pile soil around the stalk in order to keep it white, so that they don't turn green. So when that happens, there's a lot of sand that tends to get caught in between, and so you want to actually rinse that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just do kind of like a little score. Score kind
to clean out the dirt that may be stuck in there.
Deep, so I'll try to demonstrate here.
So it's probably like a 1/2 inch cut in there, and just clean that out. Because there may be some dirt in there. Yeah.
As you can see, actually, right here, you can see there's a bunch of dirt that's kind of lurking
right.
in there.
Okay, got it.
So you want to rinse that out fairly thoroughly, and then once you've done that, just lay them in a baking dish and just roast them, probably again about 350, 370.
And people would just eat this whole leaf. See, I would think of it as like
an entire thing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just think of it like endive. And endive's another vegetable that's actually treated much more like a vegetable there, a cooked vegetable than here. But endive, or if you ever thought about like baking whole onions or things like that, or asparagus, leeks, are very much like that. And they make just a lovely sort of a succulent. The texture may not be for everybody. They're a little bit slimy, kind of like onions, I guess. But again, if you combine them with a little bit of oil, some salt and pepper, fresh herbs, they can just make really a lovely, sweet, mellow dish. And then their character is they taste like onions, but they're a little bit sweeter, and they have a little bit richer, more complex flavor. They're not as pungent as onions, and so they'll cook down to a beautiful dish.
Interesting. I would never have thought, because I've had leeks in recipes, and I cut it like this, and then I throw the rest out.
Right.
I didn't know.
Also, you can cut the tops, or you can use these upper reaches, and you can cut them and just use them raw in salads. Throw them into stir fries or
this. So you can eat this, and can I eat it?
You can eat it raw, but it'll be a little tough. But it should be kind of like an onion. Yeah. A little tougher onion.
Yeah. I feel sorry for the person who's going to meet me next, because I just ate a raw onion. It does taste like raw onion.
Actually, one of my favorite dishes, I'm not a vegetarian, but one of my favorite dishes is I like to actually cut up kielbasa, or a sausage and then just fry it up in the pan with just a ton of leeks.
That'd be good. But I didn't really because when you look at these leaves, you think, I better throw this out because they're not going to be that good. But when you cook them up, they probably soften.
They're just like onions, right.
I just didn't know.
Right, it's just another way of not wasting food, I'm
just a colossal waster, but now I'll be better.
I'll be better. If you have a compost pile, it can go to good use.
Yeah.
So, lowly red cabbage. So I know most of us are familiar with red cabbage, and probably not a lot more to say other than, just I brought this in because I kind of wanted to point out again about the benefits. I know if you have a choice of eating the green cabbage versus red cabbage, you're getting kind of a little more of the benefit of the
because of the phytonutrients,
for your body. But any cabbage is actually very good for you. One thing that sometimes turns people off is when they cook cabbage is that it can turn this kind of bluish purple, really yucky color.
Yeah, what's with that?
So all it is just that that pigment that makes the cabbage red when it's raw, it doesn't hold up well when cooking, so it tends to dissolve away. It's water soluble.
Okay.
So it dissolves away.
So don't worry.
So one way you can actually get around that is when you, like if you're steaming your cabbage, is to squeeze like about a half of a lemon, cut up a lemon in half and just squeeze the juice, or add a little vinegar. Which is one reason why cabbage is often
mixed with vinegar.
Red cabbage is mixed with vinegar. It helps to preserve the color and add flavor.
Right.
So that's a little trick. My favorite way of, a lot of ways to make cabbage, but my favorite way is really just actually steaming it. It for about 20 minutes, until it's pretty firm. At that point, it's not mushy, but obviously texture is up to you, how much you want to cook it. And then just dress it with a little hazelnut oil. Hazelnut oil.
I'm hearing hazelnut oil a lot.
Hazelnut oil is my personal favorite.
Is it as healthy as olive oil?
All the oils kind of have their own, they have their own characteristics. Yeah. Olive oil has certain chemicals in it that the nut oils do not, that, have their own health benefits. But what I like hazelnut oil, and it's kind of an unusual ingredient. You can't get it just everywhere, but if you find a really good source, I recommend getting the very best that you can, because it's one of those oils, like most oils, the better quality you can afford, the better it will be. But it has kind of a subtle hazelnut flavor to it, and it is really complementary to many vegetables.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And you don't have to use a lot of it, too. You just use, just like a couple of teaspoons maybe at the most.
Wow.
Just drizzle.
Most recipes are like 2 tablespoons of anything of oil.
Well, it's up to you. I mean,
right, no.
What your
health profile is.
But my point being is that if it's a really good oil, quality oil, you'll need less of it because it will have more flavor.
Oh.
Yeah, just dress it with a little bit of salt, and so that way the taste of the vegetable comes through. My favorite preparations are really just the most simplest of things to let the vegetable shine.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget that when we're
I love how things. You are it's about diversity of vegetables.
Right, it really is about the
so many biases against cabbage and leeks, and then this poor Jerusalem artichoke that's not even an artichoke or from Jerusalem. Like the lesser known vegetables, loving our vegetables.
And last but not least are these little things, which people either just, they love.
My husband hates them. I love, what are the artichoke? No, what are these things called?
Brussels sprouts. Right.
Yes.
So the reason that most people hate them, actually there's a couple of reasons, but one of them, my husband actually hates them tremendously. He was forced to eat them as a kid. They were punishment food.
Oh, no.
Where you couldn't leave the table until you finished your Brussels sprouts. And they were also cooked in the worst way possible, which is to boil them.
Oh, gosh. That sounds awful. I've had them roasted, and they're delicious.
Yes, they can be really, really good. But they can also be made very bad just by the way that they are cooked and also by the age of them. So oftentimes the smaller the sprout, the sweeter and more milder they'll be.
Oh, did not realize.
Doesn't necessarily mean these bigger guys will be bad, but the older a Brussels sprout is, and oftentimes the larger, then the stronger that flavor, that sulfurous compound will be, which is what gives them that bad odor. The longer you cook them, the worse it's going to get.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did not realize.
So the steaming, the boiling, it breaks down the structure in the vegetable.
So it really is a punishment.
It releases those sulfurous compounds. And so if you want to minimize that, the best thing to do is actually to roast them.
Right. So your husband's mom really was trying to punish him by boiling these sulfurous little items and making him eat them. Okay, so when you look at this Brussels sprout, I'm looking at, there's a bunch of like little leaves and brown spots. So is it just like washing them off or cutting them out, or what do you
just rinse them off, or if the outer leaves, just snap them off.
Right. And so there's little brown bruises on them. Don't worry about them.
If there's little blemishes on them, as long as it's not mowed, it's perfectly fine. It's just part of the sprout.
Okay.
And this is something, too. When you get your produce from a farm, a farmer's market, or a CSA especially, you will find a lot more things, blemishes. You may find insects, a lot more dirt, a lot more spots, a lot more whatever. And this is another thing, that when we shop at a supermarket, we don't realize how sanitized things are. Right. And actually, something like 20% of our produce is actually thrown out right away before it ever gets to the supermarket.
Oh, wow.
The shelves, the produce area, because of the blemishes on it. Right. Because they know that
they're perfectly edible, but then people won't buy those, and they'll think, Safeway, why do you have this, bruised apple?
Right. And so we just, as consumers, we kind of just need to be re-educated that just because something has a blemish or a small soft spot, or even a caterpillar curled up, it does not mean that the whole thing is bad and that you should throw it out.
Okay, I'm going to tell you some interesting and potentially, I don't know what you're going to think about story, but my son was in Louisiana, and they would go to stores and take the blemished stuff and throw it out in the garbage can, and then this gentleman in Louisiana would pick the stuff out of the garbage can and distribute it to people who were low-income families that couldn't afford really good, healthy vegetables. Right. No, albeit from the garbage can of the Safeway, but it was perfectly fine.
Yeah. Actually, there's an essay in my book in one of the sidebars that actually we talk about food waste, and we talk about actually all kinds of efforts all over the world that places are doing in order to salvage this food and to turn it around either at food banks or other places. There's actually a manufacturer of a whole line of soups. It's out of Denmark. It's a whole line of soups that their marketing claim to fame is actually rescuing these ugly fruits and vegetables and repurposing them into,
Well, just even if a food bank could go to the Whole Foods where they throw out large...
They do. There are many programs. They're called gleaners, actually. Yeah. So they take a lot of unused or unwanted...
And then do stuff with it.
Right. Then they turn it around to food banks and pantries, which is just great because those are the kind of people that often need this kind of healthful food the most.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Thank you. So I want to go. I feel my kids don't like eating vegetables.
Well, you should try.
I'm going to try. And so now I have a cookbook I'm going to try. And my kids may be mad at you or me. But I'm going to try. I feel really incented.
Well, let me know how that goes.
Yeah. Thank you. We've been talking to Mia and we've been talking about her book, Bounty from the Box. Tell us again your website if people want to buy the book.
It's at www.bountyfromthebox.com. And don't forget that until February 28th of 2017, we're running a promo for 15% off if you enter the promo code CSADAY15. And
you can get the book. And then also, in conjunction, you can go to CSAday.info. And also you can actually try one of these boxes.
Right. Find out more info.
Yeah.
Also go to localharvest.org because that has a fairly complete listing of CSA farms all around the country. So chances are very good that if you enter in your city, state, you'll be able to come up with a whole list of CSA farms and farmers markets in your area.
Excellent. Thank you
so
much.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.